She was only 6 years old. That morning, she woke earlier than usual. Through the small, high window in her nursery, a pale cold light spilled in, and tiny motes of dust danced in the beam. The girl clutched the rag doll her mother had given her for Christmas, and for a fleeting moment she still believed the day would be ordinary. Breakfast with porridge, a walk in the garden where the apple trees had just begun to bloom, and perhaps she could persuade her nanny to tell her favorite story about the knight who slew the dragon. But footsteps in the corridor shattered that fragile morning peace. The servants entered in haste, their faces grave, their movements hurried as if driven by something unseen. They seated the girl on a chair, and women's hands began to weave around her. Some combed her soft fair hair, others fitted a thin circlet of golden threads upon her head. She tried to ask, "Where are we going? Why so early?" But no one answered. Her words dissolved in the air, too delicate for the heavy silence that surrounded her. Soon they dressed her in a gown that seemed far too heavy for her small frame. Silk chilled her skin, the sleeves tightened at her wrists, and the hem dragged along the floor, tangling at her steps. The girl whimpered. She wanted it all gone. She longed for her simple linen frock in which she could run freely on the grass. But the stern nanny said, "You must look worthy. Today is a great day." She did not understand what those words meant. A great day. To her, a great day was when her father let her ride the pony, or when the cook slipped her a warm apple tart in secret. But this great day smelled of unease, of something foreign and frightening. They led her into the great hall. Vast windows spilled gray light, the walls draped with tapestries of battles and hunts. Even the woven knights seemed to gaze down on her with stern eyes. The girl felt her palms grow damp. She hugged her doll tightly, but one of the women snatched it away. A queen does not carry toys. Her heart sank. At the far end of the hall stood a man. Tall, broad-shouldered, cloaked in dark velvet. Upon his head glimmered a crown, its jewels burning like small fires in the pale light. He was 29 years old, an age unfathomable to her. His face was severe, with a dark beard, his eyes heavy, accustomed to deference. The girl looked up at him and saw not a husband, not a protector, but a frightening stranger. She wanted to hide behind her nanny, but the servant's hands pressed her forward, gentle, yet unyielding. With each step, the hem of her gown rustled against the floor, far too loud in the hushed hall. Dozens of eyes bore into her. The courtiers whispered, their voices blending into a drone like the buzz of bees. The man reached out his hand. His palm was large and firm, a hand that could wield a sword or sign a death warrant. Her tiny fingers hovered, trembling, before they brushed against his. His warmth felt alien, and she shivered. Yet behind her, the murmurs of approval rose, leaving her no choice. The child placed her hand in his. The sounds of the ceremony swept past her like wind. Her little heart thumped so loudly she could not hear the priest's words, nor comprehend the vows, nor grasp the meaning of promises spoken in solemn tones. To her, it was all the murmur of a foreign tongue, distant and unwanted. She clenched her teeth, longing instead for the garden, to sit in the grass and braid daisies into crowns to place on her sister's head. When someone declared her wife of His Majesty, the hall erupted. Bells pealed, trumpets blared, courtiers clapped and bowed. She remained still, rooted to the floor, as if glued there. Tears welled in her eyes, but she dared not let them fall. She knew, somehow, that if she cried, They would judge her, and the king, this imposing adult, might grow angry. After the ceremony, they took her to new chambers. The room was vast, its ceilings high, its curtains heavy, its tapestries somber. Yet to her it felt cold and empty. In the corner stood a bed 3 times the size of her little one at home. She ran to it, burrowed into the folds of the coverlet, and for the first time that day let her tears flow. She wept silently, not to be heard. One question echoed in her mind: why? Why did her mother allow this? Why did her childhood end in a single day? A servant entered, set down a silver cup of milk and a piece of sweet bread. She tasted the milk, but it seemed bitter. The flavor of childhood had vanished, and even the sweetness of the bread could not bring it back. That evening, the king came to see her. He looked at the little girl curled in the bed and said quietly, "You are my queen now." But his words sounded less like a promise than a sentence. She gazed at him with wide eyes full of fear and confusion. She did not know what it meant to be queen. She knew only this: in her heart still lived a child who wanted to play, not to wear a crown. That night she fell asleep with the doll she had secretly retrieved. Dried tears stained her cheeks, but in her dreams she ran once more through the garden, laughing, bathed in sunlight. Yet at dawn, footsteps would again echo through the corridor, and a new day would weigh on her shoulders, as heavy as the crown unseen but already hers. So began the story of England's forgotten queen. The story of a child stripped of play and laughter, traded for politics and the ambitions of others. A story unrecorded by most chroniclers, but alive in the silence of her heart, in her tears, and in her innocent question, why? The palace became her new cage. Its walls were high, thick, and impenetrable, as if the stone fortress guarded not only gold and royal treasures but also the souls of those who dwelled within. The girl, who only yesterday had known the scent of apple blossoms and the laughter of her sisters, now lived among echoing corridors where even her light footsteps returned to her as hollow sounds. They called her Queen. The word sounded grand, and adults spoke it with respect or with flattering smiles. But to her, it was empty, cold, like the stone floors beneath her feet. She did not know what it meant to be a queen. She only knew that she could no longer run, jump, or laugh aloud. Each time she tried to smile or speak as a child, the ladies of the court exchanged glances, shook their heads, and whispered, "Not fitting." The servants taught her how to sit with her back straight, how to incline her head, how to fold her hands neatly in her lap. They taught her words that felt dry and heavy on her tongue. She repeated them, but inside she felt herself fading, losing the little girl who once knew the village women's songs and loved falling asleep on fresh hay. The king paid her little attention. He was consumed with affairs of state, meetings with advisors, letters from foreign lands, wars discussed in dimly lit halls. Sometimes he came to see her, his gaze stern, his voice brief: "You must learn. You must be worthy." After such visits, she felt smaller than ever. Now and then, she heard children's laughter beyond the walls. The children of courtiers played in the courtyard, chasing balls, hiding behind columns. She longed to join them, but each time she tried to move toward the sound, one of her tutors stopped her. "You cannot. You are the queen. Games are not for you." From her window she watched them run, and in her chest a pain rose as sharp as her longing for home. At night she cried into her pillow. In dreams she saw her mother gather her onto her lap, singing an old lullaby. She would wake beneath the heavy canopy of her grand bed and know such closeness would never return. In place of her mother there was a maid with cold hands, dressing her each morning and saying, "Rise, your majesty." One day she dared to disobey. She ran barefoot into the palace gardens, leaving her heavy shoes on the path. The earth was cold but gentle, the grass tickled her feet, and for a brief moment she was free again, as if back among the apple trees at home. But they caught her. The tutors shouted, seized her by the arms, and dragged her back. Her punishment was harsh. She was forced to sit for hours on a hard chair until her back ached and tears filled her eyes. "Remember," the stern lady said, "a queen does not run barefoot." Rumors spread quickly through the palace. Courtiers whispered that she was too young to be the king's wife, that the marriage was a mockery of the crown. Some pitied her, others scorned her, but none saw her as a child who needed tenderness. She felt it in every glance, cold, indifferent, mocking. Her days became all the same. Lessons in etiquette, prayers in the chapel, long meals at the great table where she could barely reach the edge. The food was strange, spiced and heavy for her small stomach. She remembered the simple porridge with honey her nanny used to make, and tears threatened to spill even as she sat among nobles. Sometimes she encountered the king in the corridors. He strode quickly, surrounded by advisors, while her small figure in a heavy gown was nothing but a shadow in his path. He nodded curtly, never slowing. In her heart brewed a strange mix of fear, hurt, and confusion. She could not understand why she was bound to him when he scarcely noticed her. One evening she found the courage to ask. When the king came to her chambers, she whispered, "Why must I be a queen? Why can't I just be a little girl?" His face remained unreadable. "Because fate demands it. Such are the rules. You must serve England." His words were too heavy for her fragile soul. She could not understand what it meant to serve England. To her, serving meant helping her mother gather apples, or holding her younger sister's hand. England was only a cold, distant word. Day by day, she withdrew further into herself. She stopped asking questions, stopped smiling. She became like a doll, dressed and placed in a corner. But inside, the same little girl still lived, the one who wanted to run barefoot through grass and listen to fairy tales by the fire. Sometimes at night she rose from her bed, stood at the window, and whispered her secret wishes to the stars. "Let me wake at home tomorrow. Let mother come for me." The stars gave no answer, but in their faint glow she found a shred of comfort. The palace filled with feasts, balls, and banquets. Musicians played lutes and flutes, adults danced, drank wine, laughed. She sat on the throne beside the king, her legs dangling above the floor. She did not understand their conversations, nor the reason behind the smiles and bows. To her, it was a noisy, bewildering dream in which she did not belong. Sometimes she caught the secret looks of pity from certain ladies. But none dared approach her, none offered an embrace or kind word. She was too high in rank, yet too small in age. She stood on the border of two worlds, childhood and power, and in both she was a stranger. Months passed. She grew, yet did not feel older. Each day was a mirror of the last, making time seem frozen. On rare occasions she was allowed to touch musical instruments, and only then did she feel a spark of joy. She plucked at the lute strings, and the sound reminded her of the wind in the apple orchard. With closed eyes, she was home again, where her childhood was still hers. But reality returned quickly. As soon as the music ceased, the tutors reminded her of rules, of dignity, of duty. Their words pressed upon her like the heavy vaults of the palace itself. She often fell ill. The cold halls, the weight of fear and sorrow weakened her. When she lay in bed with fever, she longed for her mother's hand on her brow and the gentle words, "Everything will be all right." Instead, a silent maid sat beside her, changing cloths without a word. And yet, within the child's heart, a spark of hope lingered. She believed that one day she would laugh again, run again, feel alive again. But for now, she remained a prisoner of the palace, a prisoner of the crown that adults had placed upon her head too soon. The palace without play became her home. A home without childhood. A home where even the sun seemed cold, its light filtered through stained glass and cast upon stone floors, turning warmth into shadow. A home where a little girl learned to keep silent in order to survive.